Hello and welcome to the Wednesday, May 28, 2025 edition of the SANS Internet Storm Center's Stormcast. My name is Johannes Ulrich, and this episode brought to you by the SANS EDU Bachelor's Degree Program in Applied Cybersecurity is recorded in Jacksonville, Florida. Well, today we have a quick diary, nothing really too exciting and special, but it's really about the security of SSH servers, in particular the authorized keys file. Now, we all know that we should use keys for authentication, not passwords, but the number one thing that I sort of see all these bots doing is that after they breach a Unix system, they will add a key of their choosing to the authorized keys file, giving them essentially a backdoor into the system. So securing the file certainly sounds like a good idea, in particular on some of these IoT and smaller Unix systems. I think the number one lesson here is that if you want to manage these keys centrally, you don't have to put them into the user's home directory. There's a simple configuration with SSH, at least with OpenSH that pretty much everybody is using, that allows you to store all the key files for all the users into a special directory. You basically just use the username or the numeric user ID as the name of the file for each user, and that way you have a centrally managed access. The files only need to be readable by the users. They don't need to be writable by users. So that way an attacker should no longer be able to modify these files at will, at least not all of these bots and such that we see performing this particular technique. And of course, that also makes then monitoring these files a lot simpler to detect any changes, in particular unauthorized changes, of course, early. Also, talking about IoT vulnerabilities, there is a good example here that I saw in a blog post from OneKey. OneKey makes software to find security vulnerabilities, so one of those software scanning softwares. And they took a look at Meteobridge. Meteobridge is, well, the Meteo stands for meteorology. It's to connect various weather stations together. It's a commercial software that's being distributed. And, well, it suffers from a very basic, really, vulnerability, but something sadly not too uncommon. The query string being passed to the URL as part of a GET request contains data that's then being passed to an eval command without further inspection. Eval, as I always say, it's one letter away from evil. It's a command that you always should avoid. And if you use it, you have to use it with utmost care that you're validating all user input that's being passed to it. There's also a little bit problem here that part of this application is written just in Bash, and Bash is not the greatest language to really do a lot of input filtering and security stuff, particularly with different white space issues and such. So definitely, I think something that I would stay away from. Use Perl, use Python if you want a simple scripting language, but Bash usually should be avoided for web applications like this. Really hard to get them right. But yeah, given that the exploit is very simple, they also published a little proof of concept here. Very straightforward, so your classic OS command injection vulnerability that then, of course, could be used to add data to your authorized keys files. And ManageEngine did publish two security advisories affecting ADAuditPlus. Was a little bit on the fence whether or not I should cover these vulnerabilities because they're really privilege escalation vulnerabilities. So the attacker must be authenticated. The reason I cover them is because they're very similar to prior vulnerabilities in ManageEngine products. They're SQL injection vulnerabilities in APIs in the product, and similar vulnerabilities in the past have been exploited in various attacks. So kind of likely that you will see some exploitation here in the near future as well, in particular, since attackers are now kind of ready to go with these two vulnerabilities. So take a look at your installs and probably want to patch this. But again, it's really more sort of a lateral movement kind of vulnerability. And talking about exposed APIs, one API you definitely don't want to expose is your Docker API. And yet again, Kaspersky came across an attack that abused exposed Docker APIs. In this particular case, the attacker, was doing what attackers do typically with these type of vulnerabilities. They use them to then install crypto coin miners. Not only did they just launch new systems, new containers within the system that they compromised, but then also did compromise existing containers to also then add their crypto miner. Well, this is something that shouldn't be that difficult to detect given the increase in CPU time, but still remains one of the more common techniques being used by attackers against Docker APIs that are exposed. Well, and that's it for today. So thanks for listening. And just a reminder, I hope to see some of you at SANS Fire and also the SANS.edu programs. If you talk to anybody at admissions and such, let them know that it was the podcast that sort of got you there. So that's it for today. Thanks again for listening and talk to you again tomorrow. Bye.